Hey there, my 5 faithful listeners and anyone who randomly stumbled upon this episode. My name is Lydia, and this is the Lydia Todd Pod. It's probably not a good idea to start a podcast because your last name rhymes with pod. But I'm here anyways. From spontaneous trips to special guests to deep spiritual conversations and everything in between, expect inspiration, stories, and plenty of laughter. Grab a glass of milk, settle in, and let's dive into the episode. Hey guys, welcome back to the Lydia Todd Pod. We are diving back into the book of Daniel because we did not finish last episode. Also, I hope that everyone, whoever listens to these, likes ASMR of Bible pages flipping because you can always hear mine in the background.
Yeah, so I was kind of surprised we couldn't finish the entire book of Daniel in one sitting.
I wonder why.
There's some sarcasm there. Yeah, I'm more prepared this time too for the last half of it, which is really interesting. So, we are ready for chapter 10, if I remember right. Isn't that right?
Right.
Okay. 4 visions in the second half of Daniel. The first half of Daniel is very interesting, but the first half of Daniel is not nearly as complicated as the last half. There are some visions in the first half, but they're quite evident what they're talking about. You've got the image with the head of gold and the arms of silver and such, but it outlines that this is the next 4 coming kingdoms, and Babylon being the head of gold. In the second half, you have the 4 beasts that we talked about, and the 4 beasts are representing the same 4 kingdoms that he talked about with the image. Chapter 8, you have the ram and the he-goat that we talked about. Chapter 9, you have the 70 weeks, and then 10 through 12 is the final vision. It's 3 chapters long, and it includes it's called the vision of the time of the end. When you look at these visions, God reveals a lot of things about his plan and his purpose. You see through all of these visions, you see a very long look into the future that God gives Daniel about these are the things that are going to happen. You know, I've always looked at prophecies of God giving these people prophecies and God telling the future about all these different things that are going to happen. After going through Daniel, I don't look at prophecies the same as I used to. I don't think it's God telling Daniel the things that are going to happen. It's God telling Daniel the things that he is going to cause to happen and the things that he is going to make to happen. One of the main points in the book of Daniel is obviously God is in control in the kingdoms of men. And if God is in control in the kingdoms of men, Nebuchadnezzar was there because God wanted him there. That very evident in the book of Daniel, because at the point Nebuchadnezzar says, well, look at this big kingdom that I've put together and that I've made, and look at how big of a powerful of a king I am. And, very short period of time, he's out there eating grass because God had given him the kingdom, and when he lifted himself up with pride, God could cut him down just like that. And so God is in control in the kingdoms of men. Babylon was in power because God wanted Babylon in power, and Cyrus came to power because God wanted Cyrus and the Medo-Persians to come to power. So all of these things are happening, and it's not God telling Daniel the future of what's going to happen. It's God telling Daniel these are the things that God is going to make happen throughout history. So we start with chapter 10, and chapter 10, leading into chapter 11, the beginning of chapter 11, it's very similar to the first part of Daniel and the visions that he saw there, in that there's not a lot of controversy over exactly what Daniel's talking about, because we can go back through history and we can see the descriptions of what he's talking about. When we get into the last half of 11 and 12 is where it begins to get more fuzzy of exactly what he's talking about. I think it's important to note that all Daniel had about this was the vision. He couldn't go back through history and look at what had happened and say, well, this is that, and this is that, and this is that, which we have the benefit of hindsight of being able to do. All he knew was the things God was telling him, and it could not have meant hardly anything to him because it's kingdoms that didn't even exist at that time and kingdoms that he had no clue about. And so when you talk about this being a prophecy to Daniel, the main message that Daniel would have gotten out of this for him was that, again, God's in control. God's going to make all this happen, and Daniel has nothing to worry about. Obviously, it was given to Daniel for more reasons than just Daniel. One of the main reasons it was given to Daniel was for us, and so that we would have it. So, chapter 10. The date is not to be argued. The date is obvious. It's verse 1. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. obviously Belteshazzar being Daniel's Babylonian name. The message was true, but the appointed time was long, and he understood the message and had understanding of the vision. So, at least to some degree, Daniel had understanding and knew what was being talked about here. This is in the 3rd year of Cyrus. Verse 4, it gives a very specific time. It says the 24th day of the month on the side of the Great River. 3rd year of Cyrus, so you have the Medo-Persians that are in power. They've been in power for 3 years now. Daniel's no longer in the king's court because he continued until the 1st year of Cyrus. You go all the way back to chapter 1, and it tells that Daniel was in the king's court, and he continued there until the 1st year of Cyrus. So this now being the 3rd year of Cyrus, he's getting these visions, but he's not in the king's court in the same way that he was throughout basically the entirety of the book of Daniel until you get to this point. He gives a description of a glorious man in the next few verses. Verse 5 and 6, he says, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose waist was girded with gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl, and his face like the appearance of lightning, and his eyes like torches of fire, his arms and feet burnished in bronze in color, and the sound of his words like the voice of a multitude. So we see this description of a man. What do we think of when we first read this description and think of what we're reading here? Clothed in linen, waist girded with gold, body like beryl. So he's using all of these very expensive things to describe this person.
A king?
Very possibly a king. Face like lightning.
I mean, I'm thinking Jesus.
Talk about face like lightning and eyes like torches of fire. I have trouble not seeing Jesus in it. It just seems to jump out that that is a very good description of what Jesus would be. Even down to the bronze that is described there. Very similar to the description of Jesus that was used in chapter 1 of Revelation. And I'm not saying this absolutely for certain is Jesus, but there's a description there that sounds a lot like him. There's a lot of times in the Old Testament where there's references to the angel of the Lord or such like, and obviously Jesus existed and has existed since before the foundation of the world. He always has been. He is God. He is eternal. Did Jesus exist during Old Testament times?
Yes.
Absolutely. And so there's going to be times in the Bible where, well, you're reading things and it talks about the Lord, or it talks about the angel of the Lord or such, and we don't need to fully dismiss the possibility that Jesus was active and working even in the Old Testament. Obviously not in the same capacity as when he came to earth and when he was revealed, when the mystery was made known and all of that, but he was in existence then.
This kind of gives me vibes of Paul on the road to Damascus and how no one else was able to see and they were all afraid.
Right. Yes, same thing here. They didn't see the vision. Daniel was the only one that saw the vision, but they were definitely afraid at what was happening, and I'm not sure what they saw. Acts 9 with Paul on the road to Damascus is interesting too, because you have it being recounted and you get even more details when he recounts and tells the story again. But the same idea, the men didn't understand what was going on. So you have Daniel. He saw the vision. He's left alone, and he has a conversation with this man. The conversation begins in verse 10, and Daniel is pretty concerned about this. It says, Suddenly a hand touched me, which made me tremble on my knees and on the palms of my hands. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. And while he was speaking to me, I stood trembling. How many times has Daniel seen visions in his life? Quite a few.
Yeah, I couldn't count.
I don't know exactly, but it's quite a few times. This isn't the first time this has happened, and this isn't the first time relatively recently that this has happened to him. And almost every time he gets a vision, it troubles him. He trembles, and he is usually pretty sad about what he sees. And the same thing follows suit here. You see the same trembling, the same fear. So I can't imagine direct visions from God ever getting to the point where, oh, just another one of those. It's like every time he gets one, it is phenomenal, it is earth-shaking, it is something that really affects him. So he says, Do not fear, verse 12, for the first day you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before God. Your words were heard. I have come because of your words. Why did he come?
Because of Daniel's words, his prayers.
because of Daniel's word, because of the prayers. We touched on this very briefly before. So Daniel prayed, Daniel asked him to come, and he came. And then he says, "But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, and behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the kings of Persia." Why didn't he come?
He was withheld. Whatever that means of him having it out with the prince of Persia.
Was the prince of Persia fighting against God's will?
Who was the prince of Persia at that time?
Would it have been Cyrus?
I thought he was king. Would have been Cyrus's son?
It could have been Cyrus's son. I don't know. I'm not sure who the prince of Persia is here. Could it be the case that there was something that had to happen regarding the prince of Persia before Daniel could know these things?
Yeah.
So could it be the case that God, through these, whoever they are, is pushing and encouraging the prince of Persia to accomplish what he wants done, and the prince of Persia is fighting it? Is it possible the prince of Persia didn't even know he was fighting it?
Yeah. I mean, unless you can see these spiritual beings, then...
The men that were with Daniel didn't even see him. So why Michael? Who is Michael?
Michael is a messenger from God sent a couple different times to different people.
And so in this situation, what we know about Michael is that he was sent by God. He was sent to relieve the man that is talking here with Daniel. And when he came to relieve Daniel, this man was able to go, and Michael took the responsibilities, apparently. You look at Daniel 12 and verse 1, and you get just a little more insight into this. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit.
At that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book.
So as he's dealing with, there's going to come a time when this happens, you have Michael mentioned again. Is Michael one of the princes of Persia?
No.
I don't believe so. And I specifically don't believe it could be a prince of Persia because of what he says there in 12 and verse 1. He's being contrasted to the prince of Persia. And so we don't have a really good description of who Michael is. Michael's also talked about in Jude 9 and Revelation 12. Could it be the same Michael?
Yeah.
Does it have to be?
No. I mean, there's a bunch of Johns, so Michael could also be a common name.
There's a bunch of Johns. It could be a common name. The interesting thing about names in the Bible is a lot of times the names are descriptions of who the people are. With Michael being a name that means who is like God, could there be more than one messenger that is like God in one way or another?
There could be, but if multiple times he's referred to by certain characteristics, it's more likely that it's the same one.
Okay. Is it different than the man that's talking with Daniel?
Well, Michael is not the man talking with Daniel.
Michael is not the man talking to Daniel. Now, the description of the man that's talking to Daniel sounds an awful lot like Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
However, Michael is a name who is like God. Michael is a name that lends itself to that same description, lends itself to the possibility of being Jesus. But they're different. So one of them definitely is not, if not both of them, not being Jesus here. But I just find that interesting because as we study through Revelation and we study through Jude and we see the name Michael and see the description of him there, it's very easy to read into that Jesus, that could be Jesus, or it could be an angel or a messenger or whatever it might be.
Since Jesus is very clearly described as God so many times, it makes me think that God wouldn't describe him as someone like God.
Who is like God.
Yeah.
And that's possible. Yeah. But there's obviously two very spiritual beings that are here, one talking with Daniel and one who is left behind to fight with the Prince of Persia. At what point did God answer Daniel's prayer?
He sent the answer, or started the answer. I mean, he answered it at the beginning, but it wasn't received fully. The answer didn't fully come until a month later, almost.
It's a long time, isn't it? So you get 21 days or something that he withstood him in between there. Does God have the power to answer prayers immediately?
Absolutely.
So he could have sent somebody else. He could have effected change himself. Why 21 days? Why the time here?
Only he knows.
So do you believe that God gave Daniel the absolute best answer to his prayer?
Yes.
Even though it took that long for him to even get an answer?
Well, you know the saying, good things come to those who wait.
Do you ever prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and wondered why you felt like you weren't getting an answer?
Yeah. Every time I don't get an answer.
So is it possible that someone that's not even you, fighting against what is right in their life, that there has to be some time and some change before you will get exactly what you're praying for?
Yeah. And sometimes the change is within us. As we know with Hannah, the Lord wanted her at a certain point before she could get what she was asking.
Right. Sometimes we have to get to the point where we're ready to change before the answer to our prayer is what we need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yes, I have no doubt that God has the power to answer prayers and to do so, and I don't think it is a limitation on his power that took 21 days to answer Daniel. It was waiting for the perfect and the right time for this to happen. Why did Jesus come when he did?
Because it was the appointed perfect time.
When the fullness of time was come, Jesus came. Did God know when the fullness of time was?
Yes.
We have to remember, he's not sitting outside of our realm, looking into it and watching it and waiting and say, okay, now's the time. He's outside of our realm. He's outside of time. And outside of time and outside of our realm, he decided this is the time Jesus should come. He decided when Jesus should come, and he did so knowing all that would ever happen before and after. Like the author of a book deciding this is the best time for this to happen because they know everything that's going to come after it because they're writing it. So the 21 days here, it's interesting. It's definitely worth talking about. There's application to us because we need to remember sometimes there's a whole lot more going on in the background than what we fully understand or grasp. That doesn't mean God doesn't listen. That doesn't mean God doesn't answer our prayers. That means that we need to trust him to do what is best and to do it at the best time because he does have our best interest at heart.
Yeah. It's pretty arrogant of us to look around physically and be like, there's no reason why he should be answering this right now. We can't even comprehend the spiritual world. Right.
So in Daniel chapter 10 and verse 14, it says, now I have come to make you understand what will happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision refers to many days yet to come. So very clearly he tells Daniel this vision is not going to happen anytime in near future. It's going to happen way in the future, a long time to come. He strengthens Daniel in 15 through 17. He's touched, he's strengthened, he gets peace, he gets strength, and he's ready to listen. And the man continues speaking in verse 20. Verse 20 says, then he said, do you know why I have come to you? And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia, and when I have gone forth, indeed the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is noted in the scripture of truth. No one upholds me against these except Michael your prince. And so he makes this comment here, and he's not even really begun with the vision yet. We're getting all of the details surrounding the things that are happening with Daniel, and then the vision starts in chapter 11. Why does he have to return to fight with the prince of Persia? Is it something Michael can't handle? Who is the prince of Greece that's going to come?
Well, another thing that just occurred to me that may be, I don't know how much of a possibility this is, but wasn't Michael called a prince?
Yeah, Michael's called
one
a
of the chief princes. So what if all of these are messenger angels appointed over different places, and
could be
the prince of Persia and the prince of Greece and stuff are angelic princes that God has assigned to different places, and then some of them are don't know, rebelling.
So if they are, they're fighting.
Yeah.
Against good. I don't know. It's very possible that it's calling them princes and they're the kings.
Mm-hmm.
Prince being a sense of ruler. So the Greek Empire follows the Medo-Persian Empire, so it would make sense for the Prince of Greece to follow the Persian prince. He's not going to be held up except by Michael, and it notes here that Michael is Daniel's prince. I believe that to be significant and interesting, but I don't exactly know what it means.
Yeah.
So chapter 11. Chapter 11 is where he gets into the vision. As we go through this, we're going to talk some about the history surrounding it, because the history of these things is what really brings them to life. He goes on, chapter 11, verse 1, he says, "Also in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood up to confirm and strengthen him, and now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than them all. And by his strength, though his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece." So he talks about 3 more kings that'll follow, and the third will be richer than them all. You have the kings that followed Darius and Cyrus here. The kings that followed them were Cambyses, and I may not pronounce these right, Smerdis, Darius, Hystapus, and Xerxes. Have you ever heard of Xerxes?
Yes.
You ever heard of Ahasuerus in the book of Esther?
Mm-hmm.
So when you follow these down through, you end up at the one who was at the time period and fitting the name of the one that was king during Esther. I'm not going to absolutely say for certain it was the king during Esther, but I think it's very high probability. The reason it's difficult to determine exactly which one he's talking about is because there was a whole bunch of them, and they all had the same name for several generations there surrounding Esther.
How original.
Yeah. That's like juniors and thirds and stuff like that today. Daniel 11, verse 3.
Aren't you a junior?
Yeah, and my son's a third.
You are part of the problem.
Yeah. We haven't changed that much, have we?
No.
Verse 3 says, "Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will." So in verse 3 here you have this mighty king. He's going to rise, do according to his will. Verse 4, "When he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not among his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be uprooted, even for others besides these." He describes the kings that will come, and then a mighty king will come, and this mighty king in his kingdom will be divided in 4 ways. Will his kingdom go to his kids?
It's going to be uprooted, so...
Uprooted, and not to his posterity, not to his kids. How many times does a king die and it not go to his kids?
Actually, a lot.
Some?
I mean,
more often?
I guess I'm thinking of like Rome and stuff, and people were just killing each other left and right to get the throne. But I guess not every kingdom is like that.
So there were some really troubled kingdoms at times. There were kingdoms where in a space of 50 years you might have 40 kings or 30 kings because, you didn't want to be king because you weren't going to live long. Somebody was going to kill you and take the throne. I think most of the time in ancient history, the kings passed the kingdom to their kids, to one of their sons, and it may not have been the firstborn, but typically it went to one of their sons. This one went to 4 different people, and none of them were his kids.
Can we demystify the Bible by defining the word posterity?
Posterity. Okay, so offspring? Okay. Children? I can pull up Strong.
It's one of those words that most people don't use.
Okay, yep. So, posterity in Strong's. The last or end, hence the future, also posterity. Latter end times hinder, most length posterity, remnant residue reward. Okay, so remnant residue is offspring. He's talking about the offspring. It's not going to, the kingdom is not going to be left to his offspring, not going to be left to his children, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. So it's not according to what he wanted or what he set up for his kingdom. His kingdom is going to be uprooted and even for others besides these. So it wasn't going to be done with his kingdom what he wanted to be done with it. He's talking about the Greek Empire. He's talking about Alexander the Great. Do you remember what happened to Alexander the Great's empire?
It was split between the 4
He had 4 generals. He had 4 generals in different areas. You have Seleucus the First, and I'm going to have to read this because I don't know this, but I have it memorized. You have Seleucus the First that took over the Syrian Empire from Turkey to India. You have Cassander that took over the Macedonian or the Greek Empire. You have Lysimachus that took over Thracia between Greek and Turkey, and you have Ptolemy the First that took over Egypt. So Alexander the Great takes this, takes the world, basically overcomes the world and conquers the world, and he has more of the known world at that time than any other major leader ever did. And he conquered it very quickly. He was still in his 30s when he died, and his kingdom was left to these 4 generals because they were the ones that had the power to keep on fighting and to hold on to it. With it being left to the 4 generals, it wasn't left to his children, it wasn't left to his offspring, it was left to people that he probably never even considered would take over his kingdom. So then he begins talking about the kings of the north and the kings of the south. Starting in verse 5, it says, "Also the king of the south shall become strong, as well as one of his princes, and he shall gain power over him and have dominion, and his dominion shall be a great dominion. And at the end of some years they shall join forces, for the daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand, but she shall be given up with those who brought her, and with him who begot her, and with him who strengthened her in those times." Why didn't God just tell Daniel kingdoms that were going to be? Why didn't he just say, the king of the north is so-and-so, and the king of the south is so-and-so, and these are the kingdoms he's talking about?
I mean, he doesn't have to. It's still prophetic. But I'm thinking that maybe he's giving room for free will for certain nations to turn to him and choose good, and he would just use a different one.
And that's a possibility, yeah. Obviously, free will is always, and this is another discussion that's upcoming, free will is always there, even though God knows what's going to happen in the future, even though God is going to use people's actions to accomplish his will, and knows their actions and is going to use them, that free will is still there. Does he ever name rulers before they're in power?
Yes. Cyrus.
He does. Very specifically, Cyrus, one of my favorite prophecies that is there. You read about Cyrus, he calls him by name, he gives details of who he is. He says that Cyrus is going to be his anointed one. In other words, God helped him and made him come to power. I don't know how much it would have meant to Daniel to tell him the names of these kings, or the names of the kingdoms even. The kingdoms had not yet come to power, the kings had not yet been born, and we're talking couple hundred years past Daniel at this point. The king of the south is referring to Ptolemy the First. He ruled from 306 to 284. One of his princes, and he was one of Alexander the Great's successors, obviously. You have Israel that's caught in the middle between Syria and Egypt. So king of the south being Egypt, king of the north being Syria, you have Israel in the middle. It makes sense that Israel would be the central point of all the visions. So when you refer to north, it's north of Israel, and you refer to south, it's south of Israel. Why not Babylon? Or Medo-Persia at this point?
Weren't they already taken over?
Well, Babylon's been taken over. Why not Medo-Persia, which took over the area that Babylon was in?
Hasn't that already happened?
Medo-Persia has taken over, yes. And by the time you get to the time period he's talking about now, that's already happened. But when he refers to north and south, it's not north and south of these foreign nations, because that's not the nation of the people of God. That's not the nation Daniel is from. So when he talks about north, it's north of Israel and south of Israel. And it is so because that's the people of God. Even though they're in captivity at this point and there really is no nation for them right now, he's still referring to them north and south of them because they're the people of God. So you have all of this happening during the reign of Ptolemy Philadelphus. The daughter of the south will go to the king of the north. Bernice was from the south. The daughter of Ptolemy was given to Antiochus with the condition that he would divorce the wife that he currently had, the wife being Laodice. So basically they're making this alliance and telling the king of the north, you get rid of your wife and you take the daughter of this king and get married, and then there would be peace between Egypt and Syria, and they wouldn't have to fight, and they wouldn't have to worry, and all of this would make a good alliance. Daniel 11 and verse 6, he says, "At the end of some years they shall join forces. The daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand, but she shall be given up with those who brought her, and with him who begot her, and with him who strengthened her in those times." So the alliance is made, but he tells them it's not going to work. She would not retain her authority. After 2 years of being married, Bernice's father told me, the king of the south, he died. You have Antiochus of the north that put her away, put Bernice away, and took his old wife back. So he really wanted to stay married to his old wife, but for the alliance, he married Bernice from the south. After her father died, he went back to his old wife. Do you think his old wife was happy about that?
Happy about him coming back to her?
Any of it.
Definitely not about him choosing a different wife. Maybe about coming back if she was, power hungry and just wanted to be back. Because I doubt she loved him for what he did. But I don't know. Love can come in crazy scenarios.
So he restored his original wife, and she killed him.
Not love.
Not a lot of love there, or anger and rage related to love. But yeah, she killed him. So you have Bernice, who is daughter of the king of the south, that he had died at that point. She fled. She ran. She tried to get away from him. She was caught. She was put to death, and they put to death her children as well. Why would they do that?
So they wouldn't claim the throne?
They wouldn't claim the throne. This wife was, quite upset about the whole situation and didn't want any chance that it wouldn't be her children to take the throne. So she had Bernice put to death, and she had all the children put to death as well.
What was her name?
Bernice.
No, the other wife.
Laodice. Laodice. I'm butchering the pronunciations of these. I know I am. So I'm pronouncing them like I originally read them and heard them in my head. And that's sometimes right and sometimes.
That's okay. We're not native to those places or times. Our language.
Right. Yes. So verse 7. He says, But from a branch of her roots, one shall arise in his place, who shall come with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and deal with them and prevail. Branch of her roots is going to come. Bernice's, which was from the south, Bernice's brother, told me, again, original with names, told me Euergritz was from 246 to 221. He attacked Syria, and he did so to avenge his sister's death. Verse 8, he goes on, it says, He shall also carry their gods captive to Egypt, and their princes, and their precious articles of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. So Ptolemy of the south succeeds, and he attacks the north. He carries all this stuff back to Egypt, and he rules longer than the normal northern kingdom. The northern king at that point was Seleucid of Callichnius, and Ptolemy rules longer than he did, just like Daniel talks about. So from this point on, you see the conflict between the north and the south. It accelerates. It just takes off. Verse 9 and 10, it says, Also the king of the north shall come to the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. However, his sons shall stir up strife and assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overwhelm and pass through, and then he shall return to his fortress and stir up strife. So you have this retaliation. You talk about the king of the south, which is Ptolemy Philopator. He moves with rage, he moves with anger against Antiochus, and he regained the Syrian territory. He defeated Antiochus at Raphia. It was a very short-lived victory, though, as Daniel tells us. Antiochus returned home and got better equipped and went to fight again. Verse 14, he describes this other battle that will come. It says, Now in these times many shall rise up against the king of the south. Also violent men of your people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they shall fall. Who's your people? Who's speaking?
Still the man.
Still the man from the beginning of chapter 10, speaking to...
So
who's your people?
The Israelites.
Jews. Yep, the Israelites. So You have Philip, which is king of Macedon, aligned with Antiochus, and in this battle, history records that there were a lot of Jews that got involved in this and fought, but they fell. Why would the Jews get involved in this battle, or any of these battles?
Because they're mixed with those people anyways. They've been captive for a long time.
They've been captive, they've returned home, but they're also, geographically, they're right in between these two kings. So in order for the king of the north to fight the king of the south, they have to pass through or around Israel and vice versa. And so during the middle of all of this, even though the Jews and Israel wasn't really greatly involved in these battles, became very relevant because by collateral they were caught in the middle. And so they had to deal with that because they were caught in the middle. So you got the king of the north prevail and then fall in 15 through 19. It says the king of the north shall come and shall build a siege mound and shall take a fortified city. The forces of the south shall not withstand him. Even his choice troops shall have no strength to resist, but he who comes against him shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. He shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his power, and he shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy it, but she shall not stand with him or before him. So we read about this, and Antiochus the Great, he defeated the south. He stood in the glorious land. Where's the glorious land?
Israel.
Israel. Going to be Israel again, talking to Daniel, that would be the land he would view as glorious. That was, at that day and time, the glorious land spiritually as well. He tried to strengthen the kingdom by giving daughters to Mary. Cleopatra was given to Ptolemy Epiphanes, and she supported her husband over her father. So he gives his daughter to this other king trying to make an alliance, and she gets all on board with the new husband instead of trying to sway the king to be in an alliance with her father. Antiochus then returned to the coastlands, returned to the Mediterranean. He battled the Romans. He was defeated by Scipio Astatius, which was a Roman military leader. Verse 19, it says, Then he shall turn his face toward the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. He was defeated by the Romans. He returned home, and very soon thereafter he died.
So the daughter of women is Cleopatra?
I believe so, in verse 17. Yep.
I knew she was somewhere in here, but I forgot where it was.
Yeah, and all of this is recorded in history, and there's very little disagreement over which kings and which queens and which daughters and such. There's very little disagreement over who it's talking about until we get about halfway through chapter 11. That's where it gets a little more difficult. So we're down to Antiochus Epiphanes, who is a very big one in history. Again, that may not be pronounced right, but
wait, Antiochus the fourth, right?
I don't know. Antiochus Epiphanes, is that the fourth?
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. Yeah. So verse 20, he starts talking about Antiochus. It says, There shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. Very specific about how he's going to be destroyed and how he dies. You have a tax collector that rules before Antiochus, and he imposed great taxes on the glorious kingdom. Who's the glorious kingdom?
Israel.
Israel. Going to be Israel again. So Seleucus Philopator was the oldest son of Antiochus and the immediate successor. He reigned a very short reign. He died, it says he died, but not in anger or a battle. Any guesses how he died?
In his sleep?
You could say that. He was poisoned.
Oh.
So it wasn't in anger and it wasn't in battle, but yeah, he died. This man was poisoned. And again, you have prophecies of God that are describing in detail how these things are going to happen. Knew he was going to die in that method. Verse 21 says, And in his place shall rise a vile person to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. So you have this vile person to whom no honor. Antiochus Epiphanes referred to himself as the illustrious, referred to himself essentially as God. His people referred to him as Antiochus Epimanes instead of Epiphanes. Epimanes means the insane. So a very common name for the people, probably not to his face, was they called him the insane. Interesting there also it says that vile person will arise to whom they will not give the honor of royalty. So behind his back they called him the insane, and he was very well known as that, and not given the honor of royalty behind his back. He made a league with them. He acted deceitfully. He plundered their riches, and through deceit, but it only lasted for a time. This king provokes the king of the south, says he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army, and the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. Yea, those who eat of the portion of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table, but it shall not prosper, for the end will be at the appointed time. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant, so he shall do damage and return into his own land. So in describing this king here and the things that were going to happen, he makes a league, he acts deceitfully, he provokes the king of the south. There was twice that Antiochus invaded Egypt. Ptolemy Sycoons was king of the south. He tried to oppose him, but he was betrayed by his own people. And you have both kings that were very deceitful with each other and very deceitful in how they dealt with one another. I like the way verse 27 is worded. It says, both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil. They shall speak lies at the same table. It shall not prosper, for the end will still be at the appointed time. What is the appointed time?
The time that God decides that kingdom is done.
When God decides that's the end, it doesn't matter what forces they have or what the lies that they try to tell, the deceit that they have with one another. It doesn't matter what they try to do. When God decides it's the end of their kingdom, it's the end of it, and there's no coming back.
I really like the part right before that. It says, but it shall not prosper. Like, there's no way that something so bad is going to come out with a win on the end. And
God won't allow it.
That's one of the, I guess, ways that God always encourages through prophecies, is always telling them there's an end. Just wait it out. Keep the faith.
Right. If you look at the main point of Daniel, obviously being God is in control in the kingdoms of men, another main point all through all these prophecies is obviously if God is in control, you trust God through anything that you have to go through. And if you trust him and follow him, you're going to be victorious in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same message that you find in other books of great prophecy similar to Daniel. We don't even have to fully grasp or understand exactly what God is talking about in these prophecies to get that message.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that message is more powerful than the prophecies. The prophecies are great. The prophecies are awesome. We can go back and study them. We can see the power of God and see that God was in control through all of this, and that God gave these prophecies so that we would know that the Bible is from him and know the power that he has. But just the fact that knowing God is in control and knowing if we're faithful to him, we will be successful, we will overcome, that to me is a great comfort. And that's one of the main points of this as well as other prophecies throughout the Bible. 29 and 30, he talks about the blasphemies that will be brought against Israel. It says, and at the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. For ships from Cyprus shall come up against him, therefore he shall be grieved and shall return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. And he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. So now you have Israel being dragged into the middle of this. They were the nation that was in the middle. They were between the north and the south, and Israel is really getting involved in this now. There was a third invasion by Antiochus Epiphanes. He went toward the south and invaded. He was not successful. You had Roman ships from Cyprus that threatened him, and when they brought that threat against him, he left. When he left, he took his anger out on Israel, and he attacked Israel. It describes how he will show regard for those who forsake the covenant of God. It was at this point that he defiled the sanctuary. He took away daily sacrifice. He made place for the abomination of desolation. down through 32 describes these things. Verse 32, it says, "Those who do wickedly against the covenant, he shall corrupt with flattery, but the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits." Again, you have that same comfort. You have a king who's coming in, and this king takes away daily sacrifice. This king defiles the sanctuary. This king does all of these things against the people of God and fighting against them. And you have the comfort there that those who trust God and those who are strong in their faith and trusting God, they're going to be successful. From 169 to 167, Epiphanes took the city of Jerusalem and plundered it. He commanded the Jews to worship the Greek idol that he took and he set up in the temple. He ended daily sacrifice. He polluted the altar. He offered a pig on the altar. He forbade circumcision. He forbade the Sabbath, and he forbade owning a copy of God's law. History followed again, just like God prophesied in Daniel that it would. 32 and 33 describes those who know God. We read 32. 33, it says, "And those of the people who understand shall instruct many, yet for many days they shall fall by the sword and flame, and by captivity and plundering." These are people of God. Do they know and understand what is right and what is good?
Yeah.
What do?
They try to tell others.
They tell others. So they're in this time when all of this horrible, wicked stuff is going on, and where the easy thing to do is to bow down and worship this idol that this evil and wicked king has set up. And you have people who still understand what is right and are standing for what is right and refusing to do what is wrong and are still actively working to teach others. So you get verse 34 along with it. It says, "Now when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help, but many shall join with them by intrigue." Is that the righteous people falling? Even in verse 33, it describes, "Yet for many days they shall fall by the sword and by flame and by captivity and plundering."
Yeah, it is.
You have the righteous people here that are falling by the sword. Righteous people here that, due to no fault of their own, because they're faithful to God and they're serving God and they're working to teach others, yet they're still suffering. 35, it says, "And some of those of understanding shall fall, to refine them, purify them, and make them white until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time." Why would God allow them to be persecuted?
It says to refine them. He's going to refine them, purify them.
So yeah, this is getting into one of my favorite spots.
Refine them, purify them, and make them white. That is God working through to, as he always promises, work all things for good.
Is he causing these things?
No.
Who's causing them?
Different nations, and ultimately, we know Satan.
Ultimately, Satan. You have Antiochus Epiphanes, a very, very evil, wicked ruler who has allowed himself to be influenced by Satan and is doing these things, these evil things. You have Satan causing horrible, horrific things to these people, even sometimes leading to their death. And God, while he allows these things, he's using them to refine these people for his purposes. Does God ever refine us?
Yes, he says he will.
Says he will. Does that mean he causes the persecutions and the difficult things that happen?
No.
If they're evil, no. If they're evil, he doesn't cause them, but he's using them. And one of the ways he can work those for good is to refine us and bring us to the point that we need to be spiritually. So in 168, Mattathias was an elderly priest. He had 5 sons that revolted, and this being described as what happened here. Up to this point, there's very little controversy over the historical events. You have the conflicts between the Persians, the Greeks, Assyrian, and Egypt. You have the kings of the north, the kings of the south. It's easy by looking at history to determine who those are. You have Israel caught in the middle. You have the blasphemies of Antiochus Epiphanes. From here forward, there's a couple of possibilities, and we're going to look at the 2 that I believe are the most possible, and I'll tell you which one I think is most probable, but there's 2 that are very strong, and either one of these 2 could be without violating the context of Daniel, without violating the prophecy, without violating history. The descriptions given, they fit detail for detail, they fit different rulers. I don't find that surprising. When you have wicked rulers, they tend to follow certain patterns and do certain things. And so you can see the patterns of wicked rulers and it becomes easy to see other wicked rulers in those same wicked rulers. So when he prophesies about a wicked ruler, it's going to be one of these two that we're talking about most likely. It doesn't really matter which of the two it is. The point is, God's in control, and the outcome is controlled by him, and the outcome is going to be right and good. So far, these prophecies go between about 300 and 400 years in the future in front of Daniel. When we think of 300 or 400 years over the course of all of history, that's not much. When you put it in perspective of the reality that the United States has not even been around for 300 years yet, and you go back all the way to the beginning of the United States, that seems like forever ago.
Yeah.
And so,
imagine
300 to 400 years is a long time.
Imagine George Washington telling us exactly what was going to happen in, like, the Biden election.
Yeah, and that being even more recent than a lot of the things he's dealing with here. So, yeah, when you look at the timeline here, it's several hundred years. It's a long time. So verse 36 on is where we're at. Verse 36, it says, "Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished, for what has been determined shall be done." And again, you have over and over again through this, what has been determined shall be done. The visions that he has seen so far, it shows the conflicts in the future. And as we come to this one, there's two main views. The king could still be Antiochus Epiphanes of Syria. He's already been described, and he was described in the previous chapter. He's described leading up to this. This would make the time of persecution that he's dealing with be about 169 to 167 BC. This would cover the Maccabean revolt. If you look at arguments for it being Antiochus Epiphanes, it's really hard to argue with the reality that it's in the exact same context of already dealing with Antiochus Epiphanes. There is a division between 39 and 40. It's different paragraphs. That doesn't carry a whole lot of weight when you consider there really weren't paragraphs in the Hebrew. It's in the same context. It's talking about the same idea and the same thing and using the same labels. If you're interpreting Bible, typically when you look at something that's in the same context and there's no reason for it to be shift in meaning, then you can't shift the meaning. So if it talks about, Acts 2 is an exceptional example. When it talks about the gifts of the Holy Spirit in 32 through 34, and then it talks about it again in 38, there's no reason for it to be interpreted as different things or in different ways because it's in the exact same context. That's a general rule of Bible interpretation. That's a very strong argument for Antiochus here. Everything can be interpreted from here on out and fits with the history of Antiochus. So if you follow all of these details and all of the things that he talks about, they can fit in with the history of what Antiochus did and what happened throughout history. So it would make sense for this to be Antiochus. Now, when you look at things that are going against this being Antiochus, the context of Daniel deals with 4 nations. Daniel deals with 4 nations over and over and over again. You have the 4 beasts, each of them being 4 nations. You have the image at the beginning that was 4 different nations, and always the 4th nation always being Rome. And then during the days of Rome, you have the eternal kingdom that comes. It would be very odd for this ending vision that is very detailed. It would be very odd for it to cut off before including the 4th kingdom that's talked about all throughout the rest of the book of Daniel. And so while in shifting gears here, you have to take contexts and you have to shift the meaning of the context, you also have to take into account the entirety of the book of Daniel and the context of that, where it's almost always 4 kingdoms being dealt with throughout all the different visions that he sees and all the different things that are seen in Daniel. The king could also be Roman emperors. Rome persecuted Christians, and they did so in the early times of the church. This persecution, if that's what this is talking about, would be between about 60 AD and carry all the way through 313 AD. If you look at arguments for it being Rome, again, almost every other vision in Daniel deals with 4 kingdoms ending in Rome, and we can look at history and know that he's dealing with Rome in almost every other place. There's a lot of symbolic images, and we're going to look at those going through here. There's a lot of symbolic images that are used elsewhere in dealing with Rome. Other thing we have to take into account is this is apocalyptic literature. It doesn't always follow the same rules that other places in the Bible follows. It's different rules of exegesis, of Bible study. When we're studying the apocalyptic literature, it is assumed that it's symbolic unless there is a reason in the text to show us that it is absolutely literal. And a lot of the problems we get into in interpreting this type of symbolic literature is we assume it's literal when it's a very symbolic language and it's a different type of literature than just regular letter from Paul to the Romans. It's the exact opposite of every other passage in the Bible when you look at interpreting it, because every other passage in the Bible, you assume that it's literal unless it gives you a reason to interpret it symbolically. And when you're going through this type of literature, you assume it's symbolic unless it's given literal. So when you look at the fact that this is, in the context of the book of Daniel, this is apocalyptic literature, which doesn't always follow the exact rules of interpretation as everywhere else, it would be understandable for it to move from one king to another without noting a distinct and definite change there. Another thing for this is the details and the historical details match with Roman emperors of the time. And so, yes, it matches with Antiochus Epiphanes, it matches with Rome too, and can be interpreted in either way. But you still have the fact that in the immediate context, it's Antiochus Epiphanes, and the details match him too. Does it matter which one it's actually talking about?
It's still like 400 years in the past, so not really.
It's still, for us, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in the past. For Daniel, it's still hundreds of years in the future. Do the righteous people overcome when Antiochus Epiphanes persecutes them?
Yeah.
Do the righteous people overcome when Rome persecutes them?
Yeah.
And that's the point, isn't it? I'm not going to be dogmatic over which one it has to be or which one it absolutely is. We don't need an absolute definite answer of that to know that God's in control. The main point of this is God's in control. So the blasphemy of this king. He raises himself, verse 36 that we read, raises himself above every god and speaks blasphemy to the God of gods. Verse 37, it says, he shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor desire the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. But in their place he shall honor a god of fortress, and a god which his fathers did not know, he shall honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones, and with pleasant things. He speaks blasphemies against the God of gods, prospering until wrath is done. Again, this is allowed by God, completed by God. Both times, both with Antiochus and with Rome, it was the set time is when God no longer allowed them to rule. His God that his fathers didn't know, and he will rule over many. He divided the land for gain. The conquests of this king are talked about starting in verse 40. It says, in the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him. So the time of the end is used several times. Let's cover that here because we haven't talked about it yet. All of this is dealing with time of the end, starting with chapter 10. What is the time of the end?
The end of the kingdom's time?
It could be the end of the kingdom. It could be the end of the southern kingdom. It could be the end of the actual end, all the way to the end of the end of the end of the world. It could be the time of the end of these prophecies. These things haven't happened yet. God's giving these prophecies. It could be when they end. It could be the time of the end of the people of God, of Israel. Did the nation of Israel come to an end as the people of God?
Yeah.
They did. So in interpreting these in the context, and in the context of the entirety of the Bible, I don't believe it can be the absolute end of times. It doesn't fit. It does, however, fit really well with the end of God's people as a whole.
It wouldn't make sense to be the end of the time, or the end of actual time, because then things keep happening.
Right. Yeah. And you've got that over and over again that happens through here. So, yeah. I don't believe it to be the end of the time altogether. It doesn't fit with what's being talked about here, and it doesn't fit with the context of the Bible. Verse 40, at the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships, and he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape from his hand, Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. Now, the really interesting thing to me through all of this is how well this fits both scenarios that we talked about earlier, both Antiochus and Rome. You can follow these through history. You can see these details in both places. Is it also possible that it's talking about both of them?
Yeah, I believe that there are dual prophecies.
I believe absolutely there are dual prophecies for sure at different times. As simple as looking at the prophecies and the promises made to Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of that was fulfilled in Abraham's life, but not at all fulfilled in the way that he ever imagined it would be when you get to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there's definitely dual fulfillments at times, and this very well could be that. 44, it says, but news from the east and the north shall trouble him, therefore he shall go out with great fury to destroy and annihilate many. He shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to an end, and no one will help him. So more of specific prophecy dealing with this and the end time in chapter 12 and verse 1. At that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as was never since there was a nation, even to that time. And at the time your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book. What book?
The of life.
Why?
Because, well, I don't know. I think that this is the time of Rome. And so, at this point, you would already have, well, I don't know. I guess this could be before, during, or after Christ if it's during Rome.
Do you want to know what we know about the book from Daniel? That's it.
That's all.
That's it. But we read that and we automatically know what he's talking about. We automatically know what he's talking about because of what?
Revelation.
Because of Revelation. Well, if this is dealing with the same thing that Revelation is dealing with, which I believe it to be, we know exactly what the book is. And it's in the book of Revelation where he deals with their names being written in the book or not written in the book, and the advantages and disadvantages of being or not being written in the book. That's the book of life that he's talking about in Revelation. I'm not saying it absolutely is the same. It would make a lot of sense for it to be the same. And this is one of the very strong clues that leads me to believe that this is Rome.
Yeah, this is interesting because normally when we think about the book of life, we think at the end, when time is up, our name will either be in or not be in the book. But when Daniel talks about it here, he is talking about while people are alive, their name is either in or not in the book. And so I wonder if it's like your name is in if you're in, but then you could choose to leave. You could choose to erase your name from the book.
Right. Well, and by turning, and so in Revelation it's the same way. They're facing persecution, and the ones who are standing strong in the persecution, their name is written in the book of life. Well, if they refuse to stand or they don't, and over again throughout the first couple of chapters in dealing with 7 churches of Asia, if they overcome, they will have eternal life. They will have heaven. What if they don't overcome?
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying about that is it's implying if they overcome as in if they make it to the end, which implies it's an after-death thing. But here, it's definitely talking about while they're still alive because it's saying that they'll be delivered.
Here it's present tense, but it is in Revelation as well. That the ones that are enduring persecution, their names are written in the book of life. And it's present tense. It's not something that will happen in the future. It's not something, it is something that is. What I was saying is the same thing you're saying. It's also something that can be lost if we don't stand for what is right. Is that what you're getting at?
Mm-hmm. What is that verse?
In Revelation? 3:5? There's 5 different ones in Revelation.
So Revelation 3:5 says, "He who overcomes shall be clothed in white garment, and I will not blot out his name from the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels."
That one looking to the future, 13 and verse 8, says, "All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. This is dealing with it from a negative, but dealing with it in present tense in the same way he dealt with it in Daniel. They worship the beast. Their names are not written in the book of life. 17 verse 8. 17:8, the beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition, and those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. That looking to the future as well. 20 and verse 15.
Well, that one is also kind of past because it's from the foundation of the world, which shows that to God, time is just
right.
It's just a constant. It's just a book sitting on the shelf that's already happened, but he can read it again.
Right. Yep. 20 and 15.
20, verse 15. Oh, wait, also starting verse 12. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works by the things which were written in the books. The sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and Hades delivered up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one according to his works. Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire.
And 21:27.
But there shall by no means enter it anything that defiles, or causes abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. Which, those last two are, they sound more like once everything's over, the reward time. But the other ones seemed more to refer to presently while you're on earth, your name is in the book of life if you're living this way.
Right. So you have book of Revelation leading up to the last few chapters, last chapter or chapter and a half dealing with actual end times. The rest of it dealing with the sufferings that they were facing under Rome. And so it makes sense that leading up to those last two chapters, it would deal with the present tense being in the book of life or not being in the book of life as they deal with the sufferings. And then you have the end time where it's sealed. So Daniel 12, at verse 1, it says, and at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book.
So is that, I'm just processing. Does that mean that maybe your name is in the book at that moment, so you're delivered, but maybe you don't actually choose to follow God until after that time, so you're not delivered? Or maybe you used to follow him, but then at that time you aren't?
What time is this dealing with?
At the time of the Great Trouble.
Time of great trouble, whether it's Antiochus or Rome. But everyone who is found written in the book is going to be delivered. Delivered from what?
From the Great Trouble.
Okay, so that deliverance is there if their name is written in the book. At what point is their name written in the book?
When they're following God.
When they follow God. So if they give in to the powers that be that are steering them towards evil, is their name written in the book?
Not if they deny God.
Not if they deny God, is it? But if they faithfully follow God, it is. I don't know about the tense of what you're dealing with there, what you're talking about. I'm not sure. Not sure exactly how that works.
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm also wondering, most of my questions usually don't have answers, but at that time, your people shall be delivered. So he's talking to Daniel. And
yes.
He says, your people.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it's implying your people as in people like you, people of God, or your people like specifically Jewish people, whether it's Christians or Jews.
So it amazes me how many times in Revelation John uses terms that are Jewish terms.
Mm-hmm.
And Revelation obviously dealing with Christians.
Mm-hmm.
12 tribes of Israel. Where were the 12 tribes of Israel at that point?
Scattered.
Even Peter does that.
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
Because that was what was understood. Most of the Christians have that background knowledge.
So he could tell Daniel, these are your people, And in being the people of God, it was their people, even though he could be talking about Christians here.
Mm-hmm. And Daniel might have understood it one way, but then we have the knowledge. Like, we have seen it happen.
We know, because we know the history. 2 puts a finality to it as well. Verse 2, it says, many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt.
Very similar to those not written in the book of life will be cast into the lake of fire.
It's the same idea. You see this type of language that's seen in Revelation all through this. That's why I have trouble getting away from it, believing that it is Rome. I have no problem with somebody who interprets this to be Antiochus Epiphanes. There's a lot of the application that still fits. It fits very well with Revelation as well, and Rome. Verse 3, those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. What did he tell Daniel to do?
Don't tell anybody.
Shut it up. Yeah. Why?
Because it's not time. It's not time to know.
There's a lot of things that still have to happen before they get to that. Many shall run to and fro.
I've heard this verse applied to so many things in the present day.
Okay.
I've heard many people talk about how fast knowledge is increasing with like technology and AI and everything.
So I'm fully convinced that the prophecies that Daniel's talking about here at this point in history have come to pass. So I don't believe that increased knowledge is something that we're looking for now.
I'm wondering, because it says seal the books until that time. So either it means people can't, he's not going to bring up this prophecy in a more detailed way until it's time, which could refer to Revelation being written. Or it could mean that the time in which people will understand what it meant is when knowledge is increasing. So the prophecies could have already been fulfilled, but they're just not understood yet because the knowledge wasn't there yet.
Yeah, and knowledge being gained through history. So we understand what these prophecies are talking about because of history. Do we have an increased knowledge over Daniel?
Way increased.
We understand a whole lot more than Daniel does simply because it's already happened and we can look back through history and see it. I don't know exactly how this comes into play, but Revelation 22:10 comes to mind here.
Also, the running to and fro makes me think about Jesus being like, hide your kids, hide your wives. No, I mean, not really, but whenever he's like, hey, if you're pregnant, you better be worried because when this happened, and he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. And so them running to and fro, that's what that makes me think of.
And Jesus ties the abomination of desolation spoken of in Daniel, ties that to the destruction of Jerusalem in Matthew 24.
Yeah. Revelation what?
Revelation 22:10.
22:10. And he said to me, do not seal the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. Yeah, that kind of makes it pretty paralleled.
So it doesn't have to be. I know that. Just because it sounds the same doesn't mean it is.
Right.
That would be a huge mistake in interpreting the Bible. However, ignoring the possibility would also be a mistake.
Yeah, it's at least a possibility because it's so paralleled and Daniel and Revelation are so tied together.
So this is the second big one. The book being the first, this is the second big one that makes me think Rome. Because Daniel's told, seal it up, the time is not yet, and John is told, don't seal the book, the time is now. So it very well, and with the language being the same, with it fitting the history of Rome and such like, it's hard to ignore.
Before we studied it together, when I read through it, I thought it was Rome, but that doesn't mean that it is. It could at least be both.
I would be very okay with it being both. I don't believe that violates any of the context of Daniel or Revelation or the rest of the Bible. When we get to heaven and if we find out that this is Antiochus Epiphanes, I'm not going to be disappointed. But I think it's Rome. Verse 5 through 7, you got two final questions here. It says, then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others, one on this river bank and the other on that river bank. And one said to the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? Have you ever heard the question, how long?
Yes.
How many times?
A lot.
It's all through the Bible.
This isn't the first time Daniel's asked.
No, it's not. Almost all the prophets ask that question, and it's all through the Bible, and it's extremely strong in the book of Revelation because you have the righteous people under the throne that were martyred that were asking how long before you're going to, bring vengeance for this, and how long is a concept that's everywhere. He goes on verse 6 and he says, verse 7, it says, then I heard the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and he swore by him who lives forever that it shall be for a time, times, and a half time, and when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished.
Who knew that football was in the Bible? We got a halftime right here.
Halftime. Who are the holy people?
God's people.
Why not Israel? Why not your people? It's been your people all the way through. I'm talking to Daniel.
Well, it could, the holy people, holy, set apart. This could definitely refer to Israel because it says...
Oh, it could.
It says when the power has been completely shattered. And that's usually not something describing the church.
Yeah. What about time, times, and a halftime?
I'm just wondering who's the halftime show. No, that sounds familiar. A short time, a long time, and a really short time. Is in another?
Time is one. Times is plural. It's two. Halftime is half.
Mm-hmm.
Total being 3.5. Daniel 7 and verse 25.
7:25. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change the times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and a half time.
Guess who's talking about? Fourth kingdom?
Caesar?
Rome, yep. Talking about Rome there. And you've got the same time, times, and a half time. I'll give you one guess, but you're only going to need one, where time, times, and a half time is used elsewhere in the Bible.
Revelation?
Guess how many times?
A time, times, and a half time?
A bunch of time, times, and a half time.
I think that's what is coming to my mind because we just studied Revelation on Wednesday nights. And I was like, I know I've read that recently somewhere.
So Revelation talks about 3.5, whether it's 3.5 years, 3.5 weeks, 3.5 months, whatever it is. It talks about 42 months. Do you have any guess as to how long a period of time 42 months is?
3.5 years.
3.5 years. It talks about 1,260 days, which is also 3.5 years. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, Revelation 12, 2 and 3, Revelation 12, 6, Revelation 12, 13 and 14, Revelation 13 and verse 5 that deal with the 3.5 in some way or another. Do you want to guess where else in the Bible 3.5 is?
Is it in a gospel?
It is not.
Is it in Ezekiel?
It's not anywhere else in the Bible.
Oh.
With the exception of the 3.5 years that he prayed that it would be without rain in James 5. That I don't believe to be symbolic. I believe it to be a literal 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
But the 3.5 used symbolically, it's used symbolically twice in Daniel and about 5 times in the book of Revelation, and that's it. When you follow 3.5 through the book of Revelation, I think you're going to find, and this is my conclusion, is that every time it's talked about 3.5, whether 3.5 or 42 months or 1,260 days, all of those times, it's talking about the time in which the people of God, the Christians, were under persecution to Rome. Every time. Would that fit here?
It would. Because
it would.
That would, even if, whether it's Antiochus or Rome, this would come next. It would come after that.
Right. Why 3.5? Numbers in Revelation carry great symbolism. 7 is complete. 7 is whole. What's 3.5?
Half of 7.
Half of 7. It's a definite period of time, but it's a short period of time. It's not the completeness. It's not the whole. It's just a short period of time for which this is going to be. They suffered under Rome. They suffered greatly under Rome. But it wasn't an eternal suffering. It wasn't something that lasted forever. And if this is Antiochus Epiphanes, it's the same thing. They suffered under him, and they suffered greatly, but it wasn't forever. God had a definite end that was going to come to this. So, chapter 12 and verse 8 of Daniel. Daniel asks a question. He says, "Although I heard, I did not understand, and then I said, my Lord, what shall be the end of these things?" What's Daniel's question?
When does this end?
Yeah.
Or what will be the end?
What will be the end of these things? A legitimate question. I can understand Daniel asking this question when, if you consider what he would understand of all of this and what he would know, it's just looking in the future at things that are going to happen, and he wouldn't know a lot about it. He said, "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white, and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise will understand." Why do the wise understand?
Because they know God's going to pull through in the end.
Because they've been told. They know God's going to pull through. They know that we are going to be delivered if we're faithful to God. We know we have that overcoming. And that overcoming is for us too, not just for people in that day and time. "And from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. It's 30 days longer than the 3.5. 3.5 being a short period of time, and this would be just a little bit longer than that. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days, 1335. But you, go your way till the end, for you shall rest, and will arise to your inheritance at the end of the days." Promise to Daniel, go your way. You're going to have your inheritance. Was there anything he was told here that could change it?
No.
Nothing he was told that could change it. Nothing that will happen in history at any time, any place, any way that will change the fact that if we're faithful to God, we have an inheritance. It doesn't matter who comes to power. It doesn't matter how powerful they are. It doesn't matter how much evil they do. If we stay faithful to God, we have an inheritance. It doesn't matter if they kill us and we're refined in that way. We have an inheritance.
That just brings so much more comfort to a person who knows about life after death. Because if not, then all of this persecution stuff, it gets way worse. There's no light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. And what he's done for Daniel and what he did for them in the time of Rome both is there's light at the end of the tunnel. How long had Daniel been in captivity?
His whole life? Or he was, what, like 12 or something?
We're not exactly sure. He was a young boy at that time. It's described, young boy. So 12, 13, 15, I don't know. He was young.
Mm-hmm.
And almost his whole life he was in captivity.
He probably wishes he was not at the beginning of the captivity.
Right. But that's why he was there. That was Daniel's purpose, was to get Israel through that captivity. You think about how many things he did.
Mm-hmm.
And what if he hadn't been there? Where would Israel have been? There were a lot of times Daniel took a wicked king, and, this wicked king is taking off. This wicked king is running in a wicked direction, and Daniel pulls him back and reminds them, God's in control. And it wasn't their God, it was the God of heaven. He was there for a purpose, and his purpose was to serve God. And when he served God, it worked.
It's a really good book.
That's my thoughts about Daniel. Love the book.
Yeah. It's almost like it's in your name to like it.
No, he was named after me.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I forgot how prophecy works.
All right.
It's reverse. Well, that was fun. We'll do Ezekiel next time. Not next time.
In a few days.
In a time and a half
from now.
Yeah. We will finish it. Are there any other things that you want to mention?
Like the book of Daniel, I like the prophecy. The language can be a little difficult at times, but if we don't get bogged down into the details of everything and having to figure them out, we can take the general message of the book of Daniel and find great comfort in it. And we can do that even if we don't know the history.
Thank you for taking us through the book of Daniel. And if you're listening, I hope you have learned a lot. I have been reminded of a lot of things, learned a lot of things. And we will do another textual one in a few months. But as of now, the next deep discussions that we'll be having will go back to more philosophical, other deep topics. So I hope that you are excited for those. As we wrap up this episode of the Lydia Todd Pod, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for you spending time with me. This really challenges my belief that I only have 5 consistent listeners. If you have any thoughts, topics, or questions you'd like me to explore further on future episodes, please reach out on one of my socials. I hope that our conversations have brought you inspiration and joy. If you have friends or family who might be interested in our conversations, don't hesitate to share the podcast with them.